Hi, everyone. My name is Miami Gold. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am here with the incomparable professor, engineer, producer, and she also holds a doctorate degree while looking fabulous, the legendary Suzanne Rogers. How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you, Miami. I'm fine, and it's nice to be with you and your listeners today.
Pleasure to have you. So, we're going to hop straight into the questions. What advice do you have for young women looking to get into sound engineering?
Hmm. Lots and lots of advice. As we know, it's a male-dominated profession. Don't let that scare you off. I worked in the business in the studio before I left and went into academia, but I was in the studio pretty much every day for 22 years. And with very, very few exceptions. Every single day, I was treated with respect by men and women with whom I worked. And it was, I talked to my colleagues about that as well. My colleagues like Leanne Unger and Sylvia Massey, and we laugh about the stories where we're treated disrespectfully because often they ended up being kind of funny a little bit later because we were able to go through them. You know, it's like the good people outnumber the bad people. So don't be intimidated by the ratio of men to women. There are lots of men out there and lots of women too who are willing to work with you. So focus mainly on the work. Be really, really good at what you do, and you'll find people who want to work with you. That I think is for beginners, that's an important piece of advice.
Got it. And so, what drives you to be an aspiration for women of this generation?
Oh goodness, it's so hard to not have role models. When I was very young and first wanting to be a recording engineer, I had my record collection. This was the late 70s, and you look on the back of the records, and I just remember just searching, trying to find a woman's name. Leslie Ann Jones, oh, there's one. Peggy McCreary, oh, there's another one. And Peggy McCreary was just up the street on Sunset Boulevard. I was living in Los Angeles, and she was working at Sunset Sound. And little did I know that in just a few years, she and I'd actually be working together with Prince. So I know the value of there being role models, someone else who's walked up that side of the mountain, who's taken that trail that you yourself hope to take. Someone else who's walked that trail can tell you, okay, watch out for this, and it's going to be easy going when you get to that. It gives you confidence to keep going. So it's a wonderful thing to look back and realize that you've reached an age where you're now serving as that trail guide for people who want to follow in your footsteps.
Nice. So, you've worked in music, now you're in academics and you hold a doctorate degree. What inspired you to switch from music to academics?
It was the same kind of feeling as when I knew I wanted to be in music. So when I was a kid, from a very early age, I had a calling.
Mm,
I wanted to be where records were being made. So I would read those album credits, and I would just, you know how little kids, when they eat cereal, they just stare at the
mm,
cereal box. I'd listen to records and just stare at those album covers and just wanting to be there, wanting to be where records were made. But I had no interest in being a musician or performer or singer or songwriter. That didn't even feel like right to me. But what felt right was helping records get made and being the first listener. So it was a powerful calling. And I answered the call as I got older. I marched up that mountain. But as I was in my 40s, I was hearing another call, and that other call was I was thinking it might be nice to work as a scientist and go to college. I had never been to college. I'd never graduated high school. So
mm.
I thought, I think I would like that. And that little voice just kept getting stronger and stronger. So ultimately, I had a hit record, and that allowed me the money that allowed me to quit my job and do that and pursue it.
Nice. Your passion is clearly inspiring. So, what do you love the most about being a professor?
Oh, it's so cute. I love the kids. I love the students. Now, my colleagues are great. The college is great, but there's nothing like sitting in a room or on Zoom with the faces of these young people, and they're looking at you like, I want to be where you've been. I want to go to that place that you've gone to. I want to see the things you've seen. I want to put myself in and these are, it's tough to be an engineer, a producer, a mixer, but I want to take on that challenge. I want to put myself in that role. So they're there and they're saying, tell me, how'd you get there? What was it like? What should I know? What do I need to know in order to get there? And it's quite delightful, that you're talking with them about music and you're putting things out there, but they're also giving you something back because they're quick to remind you, teacher, today the industry is different.
Mm.
The music is different today. This is how we do things in this day and age. And so it's a two-way conversation. They're educating me about the music industry and the youth of today. I'm educating them about the history and the tradition. And together, what we're doing is just building a bridge, from the past through the present and to the future. So it's a lovely conversation. And I get so proud when they do good work. I'm enjoying their success vicariously.
Nice. So you have a very long career and you've worked on many projects. But what is your most favorite project you've worked on?
Most favorite? It's kind of hard to say because you'll like different projects for different reasons. Certainly, when I worked with Prince, it was extraordinarily exciting because you knew those records were going to sell.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful thing to be in the studio and be making something, and there'll probably be at least 1 million people who are going to hear it. So that's satisfying. But then working with Wendy and Lisa, they were in Prince's band, and when they left Prince's band, we did a couple of albums together, and they're still my friends today. Working with all women was incredible. So it was Wendy and Lisa, Carla Azar, their drummer, and their two sisters, Susanna and Cole, were in the band. And when all of us would get together to work, it was all women. So it was slightly different than the mixed environment where we had normally been. So those were very satisfying because I was working with friends.
Hmm.
Working with the band Gegita was incredibly satisfying because they taught me so much about music and how it works. The Gegi is now a very famous producer, Greg Kirsten, who worked with Adele and Paul McCartney and Beck and Foo Fighters, long list. But back when I knew him, he was 23 years old, and getting to work with geniuses was really, really exciting. And then there's working with folks who are lesser known, and they're doing their debut record.
Hmm.
So it's just all hope. I mean, you have no way of knowing if it's going to work. And that's satisfying. So it's really hard to identify one as being the most satisfying because all of them will scratch a different itch. All of them will satisfy you in a different way.
Wonderful. Not many people can say they've worked with Prince. What was your experience like working with Prince?
I was hired as his technician. So he had just come off the 1999 tour. He was already in pre-production for the Purple Rain movie. He'd already started recording for the Purple Rain album. So he knew he needed someone to come to Minnesota, where the movie was going to be shot, and keep his home studio running. He needed a technician who could provide sound for the film and who was an experienced technician. So he put out the call to his management to find him someone. They were based in LA. I was based in LA. Through the grapevine, they found me. And it was a perfect fit because he was my favorite artist in the whole world. I had seen his show every time he'd come through Los Angeles, and I had all his records, and I was a technician and I was a woman, and he liked working with women. So they hired me, and I moved out there. It was incredibly intense. Like that was a train that moved really fast. And all of us had to keep pace with him because Prince's career was on fire. Then he was just coming up, and it was only going to go higher in the years when I was with him. So it was important to keep up with him. And that meant working extraordinarily hard. But it was fairly easy to do in due to the reason that he worked harder than anybody.
Mhm.
It's not like he sat back and had everyone else do his work for him. No one worked harder than he did. No one. So we all worked really hard just to keep up with him. And he inspired me to work harder, to do my best work. He loved putting the goal just beyond your reach. whether that was his musicians, his faculty, or his staff, the people who were his management. He like having the goal be just beyond your reach, so you push yourself to do more than you thought you could do. It was thrilling, and I'm working with my favorite artist, so it was a dream come true.
I'm a little bit jealous. That is awesome.
Oh,
So
it
you
was awesome.
you was. So you mentioned earlier working with an all-female team. How do you feel like that affected your career and your creative process in general?
Well, it's an interesting thing. There aren't that many physiological differences, brain differences, I should say, between men and women. So when music cognition researchers look at how the brain processes music, there are very few differences between a male and a female brain, but there are some differences. And it has to do with the presence of estrogen, among some other things. But anyway, what's more different about it is not the music so much as how women work. In 2018, the summer of 2018, I was invited along with Wendy Wang and chief engineer at Atlantic Records, Ebony Smith. Do you know Ebony?
No.
Oh, you've got to reach out to Ebony Smith for your program. She's the chief engineer at Atlantic Records in New York, and she's just fabulous. So Wendy, Ebony, myself, two other women, uh, five of us went to New Zealand, and we had a week with there was like 15, 16 women who were New Zealand's top female songwriters. So we were all women in this studio for a week making records, and we would have a round robin kind of thing with the studios. So the artists would move from room to room to room and work with the different producers. And it was so interesting, the way that women work tends to be more cooperative. Other studies show this than the way men work. Men evolved to be competitive. They're competitive. I mean, that's nature kind of made them that way. But women are much more likely to pass the ball around, the ball of ideas, and not want to be possessive about taking credit for things. Um, Men are more concerned, I think, with who gets credit and who's on top, and they're seeing more of a pyramid structure. And how's this hierarchy going to work? Who's the boss here? But with women, it's more like a circle. We're just more likely to just, yeah, there's an us, and this is what we're doing, and let's just us do this together. And that feeling for us, I think, reduces the pressure, and it reduces the pressure for a lot of men too, which is why, going back to what I was saying when we first started talking, that's why a lot of men actually prefer to work with women or to have women in the room, because it removes that some of that competitive feeling.
So, who are some of your favorite role models in the industry?
Role models for me were the women I looked up to, um, including Leslie Ann Jones, who's out there at Skywalker Sound in San Francisco, and then Peggy McCreary, who I had the pleasure of working with at Sunset Sound, because they were the women whose names I could see on the back of albums. But then there were so many. I mean, the people who do their work well, it just blows me away. Their craftsmanship, their skill. I like the mixer, Mick Gazowski. Mick Gazowski is just amazing. And I like all the many producers that I worked with and the folks who taught me stuff. I look up to them for their incredible abilities. What they understand about music is, well, it's how I learned by being in their presence. So they were role models.
Wonderful. Love it. So, next question. What was your favorite part about working with the icon that was Prince?
My favorite part, this is going to sound a little funny, maybe, but in his heart of hearts, he was a really lovable guy. Now, on the surface, I mean, think about it. He was a millionaire by the time he was, what, 23 or something like that. He had employees. When I met him, he had just turned 25 years old. All the people around him, his band, his staff, all the people around him, bands like The Time and Vanity Six, girlfriends, all got a paycheck from him. What would it feel like if everyone who is close to you is someone who you give a weekly paycheck to.
Mhm.
He took his role of being the boss seriously, and he was a good one, a really good one. He was a good leader. He was responsible, and we appreciated that about him. But down deep inside, when he was happy and he was just in the studio where I saw him, when he was making music, he was the child that he had always been. He was in his happy place. He was doing his happy thing. Getting to see him, his true self, in his environment, doing the thing that he did best. The phone wasn't ringing, no one else was around. That was such a rare privilege. And the man that I saw when we were working together under those conditions was just a really great guy who was an extraordinary genius, incredibly talented. Um, and yet I got to see him as if we had been friends in high school, as if we were kids who we just knew each other and we hung out, kind of on that level. And so yeah, that was the best part about it, I think, is getting to see the real man, not the man on stage, not the man on a date, not the man hanging out with his friends and making jokes or watching basketball or playing basketball or whatever, but him doing what he did best, making music. I was incredibly privileged to spend hours witnessing that.
You also mentioned basketball before we go into the final question. Was he actually that good at basketball?
Oh yeah, I think I remember hearing somewhere, I'm pretty sure I've read it more than once, that he played on his school's basketball team, and he was only 5'3" tall. He seemed taller because his hair was high and he wore the high heels and his aura was just so big. But yeah, he was a real athlete, a real athlete. He super fast reflexes, very, very fit. And he loved that. At rehearsal, summertime in Minnesota, there would be a I don't even know what it's called, a basketball net. Clearly, I don't play sports, but the crew, they'd get together and they'd play softball and they'd play basketball. And at Sunset Sound in the court, there was that basketball net, and Dave Chappelle famously made that famous. They were talking about the basketball and the pancakes and all that. That was spot on. Yeah, Prince would play basketball while I'd be doing something in the studio, and he was waiting for me. He'd go out and shoot hoops and play horse with Gilbert Davison and guys on his crew. And he did have a sweet tooth, and yeah, pancakes. Yeah, he was all for it.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, no, I think Prince appreciated that, as I understood it.
Oh my God, love it. So we're going to go into the final question. You have done it all. Your career is beyond inspiring. But what is next on the horizon for you?
I'm currently writing a book. I was approached by a co-author a couple of years ago and asked if I would like to write a book on music. And I said, well, I'm not the one to ask because I'm not a musician, but I can write a book on what I do, which is music listening. I've been that since I was a little girl. And that's what we're doing. We got a book deal, and I'm working on this book right now. It'll be out in 2022 because apparently it takes a long time for a book to be released. But it's a book on music listening from the perspective of a record producer, a brain scientist, and a non-musician, which is what I am. Yeah, it's exploring music as a listener, not as a music maker, but as a music consumer, a listener.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miss Suzanne. It has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. It's nice to speak with you too. And I wish you all the best of luck with this.
As well.